Mr. Speaker, I yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, with regard to the current debate on the floor on Iraq policy, I'd like to offer the following observations. First, I respect the President's constitutional role as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, and I appreciate President Bush's offer to entertain suggestions from Congress regarding Iraq policy. I understand that success in Iraq depends on bipartisan support at home. I applaud U.S. troops who are serving in Iraq with professionalism and bravery. They deserve the support of all Americans. It is becoming self-evident that multiple extended deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan have strained the military. Current deployments and those to come will have lasting impacts on recruiting, retention, and readiness of the all-volunteer military. Unfortunately, sectarian violence in Iraq between Sunni and Shia Muslims is increasing, and the failure of Iraqis to reach political settlements and support a unified government greatly contributes to the increased violence. I believe it is time for Iraq's government and security forces to step forward and bear primary responsibility for internal security. As the gentleman from North Carolina noted, the former head of the U.S. Central Command, General John Abizaid, told Congress last November that sending in more U.S. troops would not contribute to success in Iraq because it would prevent the Iraqis from taking more responsibility. It is clear that Iraqi public sentiment opposes the continued U.S. troop presence. In November, the Iraqi study group called for new diplomatic and political efforts in Iraq and the region, and a change in the primary mission of U.S. forces that will allow the United States to, and I quote, begin to move its combat forces out of Iraq responsibly. Unfortunately, the Iraqi government has made little progress toward assuming more responsibility for security, disbanding militias, reconciling sectarian differences, and improving essential services. Therefore, I've reluctantly concluded that I have to disagree with the President's plan to send in an additional 21,000 plus combat troops. While I applaud the President's reassessment of U.S. Iraq policy, I joined several of my colleagues in January in informing the White House that I did not support an expansion of American troop strength on the ground, and nothing that I have learned since has caused me to reconsider my position. Nevertheless, Congress should not take any action that would endanger U.S. military forces in the field, including the elimination or reduction of funding for troops in the field. Most Americans fundamentally understand the long-term security interests of the United States would be best served by an Iraq that can sustain, govern, and defend itself and serve as an ally in the war against extremists. Overall, U.S. military, diplomatic, and economic strategy should not be regarded as an open-ended commitment, but should be conditioned upon the Iraqi government's meeting benchmarks, including the deployment of additional Iraqi troops in Baghdad, equitable distribution of resources without regard to sector ethnicity, the use of oil revenues to benefit all Iraqi citizens equitably, and granting military commanders authority to make decisions without political experience. Mr. Speaker, with very minor edits, the remarks you've just heard from me summarize the resolution on Iraq offered by Senator Warner in the other body. It is one of the alternative resolutions we should be debating here today. Unfortunately, the majority leadership does not want to allow a full and fair debate on Iraq. When the Democrat leadership in the other body tried to force a vote on a resolution without the opportunity to offer meaningful amendments, the minority was able to insist on their right to a real debate rather than this phony pretense. Unfortunately, we do not have that ability in this chamber. So I will vote in favor of the resolution before us. as offered, as narrow and as inadequate as it is. But I can't help but express my frustration that the leadership of the House has squandered an opportunity to allow a full and fair debate with real amendments, not just to Republicans, but to all members of the House, including their own members whose voices are stifled by this decision to put political calculations ahead of the national interest and a robust debate. I am not sure what the leadership of the majority party is afraid of, but if they have the votes to reject alternatives, may I have 15 more seconds?
15 seconds.
Gentleman is recognized for 15 additional seconds.
If they have the votes to reject alternatives, then they lose nothing by allowing them to be offered. If they do not, they will quickly learn, as we did, that if you need to use procedural games to avoid a tough vote, you have already lost on the underlying issue. I thank the gentleman from North Carolina for allowing me to be part of this debate.
Gentleman